The clock on the kitchen wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Naomi pushed open the front door of the house she'd called home for 5 years. Her feet ached in her heels, and her shoulders were tight from hours of intense negotiation. The meeting had run late, but it had been worth it. Every exhausting minute had been worth it. She slipped off her shoes in the entryway, holding them in one hand while she loosened the scarf around her neck with the other. The house was too bright for this hour. Every light seemed to be on, and she could hear laughter coming from the living room. Her stomach tightened. That laughter wasn't meant for her. Naomi walked quietly toward the sound, her stockinged feet silent on the hardwood floor. She stopped in the doorway of the living room, and her worst suspicions were confirmed. Derek, her husband, sat on their couch with his arm around a woman Naomi had seen before. Brittany. The woman from Derek's gym. Empty wine bottles cluttered the coffee table, and the air smelled like alcohol and cheap perfume. Well, Derek said, his words slurred as he spotted Naomi. Look who finally decided to come home. Where the hell have you been? Naomi's throat was dry. She was too tired for this fight. I was working late. There was an important meeting. Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. Brittany giggled beside him, her hand resting possessively on his thigh. Working late, he repeated mockingly. You mean sitting at some desk filing papers? That's not real work, Naomi. Real work is what I do. I'm tired, Derek. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Naomi's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. She was always steady. She had to be. No, we can't talk about it tomorrow. Derek stood up, swaying slightly. He was drunk. Very drunk. You think you can just waltz in here at midnight without explaining yourself? You think I'm stupid? I never said that, Naomi replied quietly. I just had to work late. It happens. It happens, Brittany mimicked in a high-pitched voice, and both she and Derek dissolved into laughter. Derek moved toward the kitchen, and Naomi's instincts told her to leave to go upstairs to get away. But she was frozen, watching as her husband picked up the yellow mop bucket sitting by the sink. It was full of dirty water from when she'd cleaned the floors that morning before work. The water was gray and murky, with bits of dirt floating on the surface. You know what your problem is, Naomi? Derek said, carrying the bucket back into the living room. You think you're somebody? You think your little office job makes you important. But you're nothing. You're a nobody who can't even keep her husband happy. Derek, what are you doing? Naomi took a step back, but she was too slow. In one swift motion, Derek lifted the bucket and threw the dirty water directly at her. The cold, filthy liquid hit her like a wall, soaking her hair, her face, her clothes. It ran down her body in rivulets, pooling at her feet. The smell of dirty mop water filled her nostrils. She stood there, dripping, unable to move or speak. Brittany's laughter was shrill and cruel. Oh my God, Derek. You actually did it. That's what you are, Naomi, Derek said, setting the empty bucket down. You're dirty water. You're worthless. I work my tail off every day and you contribute nothing to this household. Nothing. Naomi's whole body shook, but not from the cold water. Something inside her, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. She looked at Derek, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for the first time in a long time. She saw the weakness in his eyes, the insecurity masked by cruelty. She saw a small man who needed to destroy others to feel big. Are you going to cry now? Brittany asked, still laughing. Are you going to beg him to stop? Naomi said nothing. She turned and walked up the stairs, leaving a trail of dirty water behind her. She could hear them laughing, hear Derek opening another bottle of wine. She walked into the bedroom, closed the door, and locked it. Only then did she let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened. She stood in front of the mirror, looking at her reflection. Dirty water dripped from her hair onto her shoulders. Her expensive blouse, the one she'd worn to negotiate the terms of the biggest deal of her career, was ruined. Her mascara ran down her cheeks in black streams. But her eyes were clear. Naomi pulled out her phone with trembling hands. She had 16 missed calls from her office, 5 text messages from her assistant, and 3 emails marked urgent. All of them were congratulations. All of them were about the deal. The $20 billion deal that she'd just closed. The deal that would change everything. She opened one of the emails. It was from her CEO. Naomi, brilliant work tonight. The board is thrilled. Your bonus will reflect the magnitude of this achievement. We'll make the announcement next week. You've earned this. Naomi set the phone down and began peeling off her wet clothes. She stepped into the shower and let hot water wash away the dirty mop water, but she couldn't wash away the memory of Derek's face, of Brittany's laughter, of the moment she'd been treated like garbage in her own home. As she stood under the spray, a strange calm settled over her. For 3 years she'd hidden her success from Derek. She'd let him believe she was just a low-level office worker because his ego couldn't handle the truth. She'd made herself small to make him feel big. She'd protected him from the reality that she earned 10 times what he made, that she was important in ways he would never be. But tonight, standing there drenched in dirty water while he entertained another woman, something had shifted. The fear was gone. The desire to protect his feelings had evaporated like steam. What remained was crystal clear purpose. Naomi dried off and put on clean clothes. She could still hear Derek and Brittany downstairs, their voices carrying up through the house. She opened her laptop and began typing. First, she emailed her attorney, a woman she'd kept on retainer for the past 6 months. Sandra, it's time. I'm ready to proceed with everything we discussed. Please draw up the papers. Then she opened a folder on her desktop. Inside were 3 years of documentation. Bank statements showing Derek's unexplained withdrawals. Photos of him with Brittany, taken by the private investigator Naomi had hired 2 months ago. Text messages recovered from the phone bill. Credit card statements showing charges at hotels and restaurants Naomi had never visited. She had everything. She'd been preparing for this moment, even if she hadn't fully admitted it to herself. The final email she sent was to her assistant. Claire, please clear my calendar for tomorrow afternoon. I need to take care of some personal business. And thank you for all your work on the quantum deal. We did it. Naomi closed the laptop and looked around the bedroom. This house, this life, this version of herself who crept home late and accepted cruelty as normal, it was all ending. She thought about the bucket of dirty water, about Derek's contempt, about Brittany's laughter. She thought about the $50 million bonus she just earned, about the promotion to executive vice president that would be announced next week, about the future she'd been building in secret. Derek thought she was nothing. He thought she was worthless. He thought pouring dirty water on her would break her spirit. But he was wrong. That dirty water hadn't broken her. It had washed away the last bit of pretense, the last shred of the lie she'd been living. Naomi lay down on the bed, fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow she would stop being invisible. Tomorrow Derek would learn what it cost to humiliate someone who held all the cards. But tonight she would rest. She would let him think he'd won. She would let him celebrate downstairs with his mistress, let him drink his wine and mock the wife he thought he'd conquered. Because his victory was an illusion, and illusions never lasted long. As Naomi closed her eyes, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not anger, though that was there too. Not sadness, though she'd shed that earlier. What she felt was power. Pure, undeniable power. And tomorrow she was going to use it. The morning sun streamed through Naomi's office window, casting bright light across her mahogany desk. She sat in her leather chair 23 floors above the city streets, looking out at the skyline she'd come to know so well. This office, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art, was more home to her than the house she shared with Derek. Her assistant Claire knocked softly before entering with a tray of coffee and a stack of newspapers. "Good morning, Miss Patterson. I thought you'd want to see these before the board meeting." Naomi took the newspapers and felt her heart rate quicken. There, on the front page of the Financial Times, was a headline, "Quantum Tech Solutions Closes Historic $20 Billion Deal." A smaller photo showed her shaking hands with the CEO of Henderson Global Technologies. She looked confident in that picture, powerful even. Nothing like the woman who'd been drenched in dirty water just 8 hours ago. "Thank you, Claire," Naomi said, setting the papers aside. "Is the conference room ready?" "Yes, ma'am. The board will be here in 30 minutes. And congratulations if I haven't said it enough already. This deal is extraordinary." After Claire left, Naomi allowed herself a moment to reflect on how she'd arrived at this point. 3 years ago, she'd been a junior project manager, good at her job but invisible in the corporate hierarchy. Then she'd identified a gap in the market that no one else had seen. She'd written a proposal, worked nights and weekends developing it, and presented it to the board. They'd been impressed enough to give her a chance. That chance had turned into a promotion. Then another. Then another. Within 18 months, Naomi had climbed from junior project manager to senior vice president. She'd built teams, closed deals, and generated hundreds of millions in revenue. The company had grown by 40% under her leadership. She was brilliant at what she did, and everyone at Quantum Tech Solutions knew it. Everyone except Derek. Naomi remembered the day she'd been promoted to senior VP. She'd come home excited, ready to share her news. But when she'd walked in the door, Derek had been in a foul mood. He'd just been passed over for a promotion at his sales job, and he'd been drinking. The moment she'd mentioned her success, his face had darkened. "Good for you," he'd said coldly. "I guess one of us has to be worth something." That night, watching him spiral into self-pity and resentment, Naomi had made a decision. She wouldn't tell him about future promotions. She wouldn't mention her rising salary. She would keep her success separate from her home life, protecting him from the truth that his wife was rapidly becoming more successful than he would ever be. It had seemed like kindness at the time. Now, sitting in her corner office, Naomi recognized it for what it really was: enabling. She'd enabled his delusion that he was the important one, the breadwinner, the one with the real career. She'd enabled his ego to grow unchecked while she made herself smaller and smaller at home. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sandra, her attorney. "Papers will be ready by end of day. When would you like service?" Naomi typed back quickly. "Hold them until I give the word. I need to prepare a few more things first." The board meeting went exactly as Naomi expected. The 12 board members greeted her with a standing ovation as she entered the conference room. They'd all seen the news. They all understood what she'd accomplished. "Naomi," said Thomas Chin, the CEO, gesturing to the seat beside him. "Take a bow. This is your moment." For the next hour, they discussed the details of the Henderson Global deal. Quantum Tech Solutions would acquire Henderson's AI division, gaining access to proprietary technology that would revolutionize their product line. The $20 billion price tag was steep, but the projected returns were astronomical. And Naomi had negotiated terms that heavily favored Quantum, including retention of key Henderson personnel and favorable intellectual property rights. "I have good news," Thomas said as the meeting wrapped up. "The board has approved your promotion to Executive Vice President, effective immediately. Your salary will increase to $2.3 million annually, and your bonus for closing this deal will be $50 million, paid out over the next 2 years." The other board members applauded. Naomi felt the weight of their approval, their respect. Here in this room she was valued. Here she was seen. "Thank you," she said simply. "I'm honored by your confidence in me." After the meeting, Naomi returned to her office and opened her personal laptop. She navigated to a folder marked Evidence and began reviewing the documents she'd been collecting for months. There were bank statements from the joint checking account she shared with Derek, showing how he'd been withdrawing large sums without explanation. There were credit card statements with charges at expensive restaurants and hotels during times when Derek claimed to be working late. Then there were the photographs from the private investigator. Derek and Brittany at a hotel. Derek and Brittany at a beach 2 hours away. Derek and Brittany shopping together, using what appeared to be Naomi's credit card based on the investigator's notes. The evidence was damning and comprehensive. Naomi had also documented the emotional abuse. She'd started keeping a journal 6 months ago, recording every insult, every cruel remark, every time Derek had belittled her or made her feel worthless. Last night's dirty water incident was just the latest entry in a long list of humiliations. Her phone rang. It was Claire again. "Miss Patterson, there's a Julian Torres here to see you. He's from Henderson Global's executive team. Should I send him in?" "Yes, please." Julian Torres entered a moment later, tall and confident with kind eyes. He'd been part of the negotiating team for Henderson Global, and Naomi had found him to be one of the most reasonable people in the room during their intense discussions. "Naomi," he said, shaking her hand warmly, "I wanted to stop by personally to say congratulations. The way you handled those negotiations was masterful. You were fair but firm, creative but practical. Henderson's CEO is impressed, and so am I." "Thank you, Julian. It was a team effort. Don't be modest. We both know you were the architect of this deal." He paused, studying her face. "I hope this isn't too forward, but are you all right? You seem tired." Naomi was surprised by his perceptiveness. "Long night," she admitted, "but I'm fine." Julian didn't push, but his expression suggested he didn't quite believe her. "Well, I'm going to be in town for the next few months helping with the transition. If you ever need anything, professionally or otherwise, please don't hesitate to reach out. You've earned a friend at Henderson Global." After he left, Naomi sat back in her chair and thought about the contrast between Julian's respectful concern and Derek's contempt. One man saw her as a colleague worthy of admiration. The other saw her as someone to degrade and humiliate. That afternoon, Naomi did something she'd been planning for weeks. She opened a new bank account at a different institution, one Derek had no connection to. She transferred the majority of her savings from their joint account into this new account. She also contacted her payroll department and changed her direct deposit information. From now on, her salary would go into an account only she could access. Derek had access to their joint checking account, the one where she deposited a small portion of her paycheck to maintain the illusion that she made a modest salary. That account had about $8,000 in it. Derek thought it was all the money they had. He had no idea about her real salary account, which held over $3 million in savings and investments. He had no idea about her retirement accounts, her stock options, her real estate investments. He'd never asked, never cared to know the details of their finances. That ignorance was about to cost him everything. Naomi worked late into the evening, preparing documents and securing her assets. By the time she left the office at 9 p.m., she had moved or protected everything of value. Her financial life was now completely separate from Derek's. He just didn't know it yet. When she arrived home, the house was dark except for the flickering light of the television in the living room. Derek was sprawled on the couch, a beer in his hand, watching a sports game. He didn't look up when she entered. "You're late again," he said flatly. "I had work to finish." "Right. Work." He took a long drink of his beer. "You know what, Naomi? I'm getting real tired of you putting your little job before your responsibilities here." Naomi didn't respond. She simply walked upstairs, went into the bedroom and locked the door. She heard Derek yell something after her, but she didn't care enough to make out the words. As she changed into comfortable clothes, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was different from the one who'd stood there last night, drenched in dirty water. This woman's eyes were clear and determined. This woman had a plan. Naomi opened her laptop one more time before bed. She sent an email to Sandra. "Proceed with all documentation. I want everything ready within the week." Then she sent a second email to the private investigator. "Continue surveillance. I need documentation of every meeting, every encounter, every financial transaction. Leave no gaps." Finally, she pulled up a real estate website and began looking at luxury apartments downtown, near her office. She'd been browsing for weeks, but now she was ready to make a move. She found a stunning penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, a modern kitchen, and a view of the city that took her breath away. She bookmarked it and made a note to schedule a viewing. As Naomi settled into bed, she thought about the two lives she'd been living. In one life, she was Naomi, the unimportant wife, the woman who could be mocked and demeaned without consequence. In the other life, she was Naomi Patterson, executive vice president, dealmaker, and force to be reckoned with. Soon there would only be one Naomi. And Derek was going to wish he'd treated her better. The announcement came on Monday morning at exactly 9 a.m. Quantum Tech Solutions sent out a press release to every major business publication. And within an hour, Naomi's face was everywhere. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications. Business Insider, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, they all ran stories about the historic $20 billion deal and the executive who'd orchestrated it. "Meet Naomi Patterson, the executive vice president who just closed tech's biggest deal of the decade," read the Forbes headline. The accompanying photo showed Naomi in her office, looking confident and powerful in a sharp navy suit. Claire brought in a stack of congratulatory messages from industry leaders, rival companies, and former colleagues. "Miss Patterson, the CEO wants to do a photo shoot for the company website. Also, you've been invited to speak at 3 different business conferences, and there's interest from 2 publishers about a potential book deal." Naomi scanned through the messages, feeling surreal. This was the moment she'd worked toward for years, but she'd imagined celebrating it differently. She'd imagined having someone to share it with, someone who would be proud of her. Instead, her husband didn't even know it had happened. Her phone rang. It was her mother calling from Atlanta. "Naomi, baby, I just saw the news. Why didn't you tell me you were working on something this big? I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom. It's been a whirlwind. Have you told Derek yet? He must be thrilled." Naomi felt her stomach tighten. "No, Mom. He doesn't know." There was a pause on the other end. "What do you mean he doesn't know? Naomi, what's going on?" "It's complicated. I'll explain later. I have to go. Love you." She ended the call before her mother could press further. The truth was too messy to explain over the phone, and Naomi wasn't ready to share the full story yet. Not even with her mother. That evening, Naomi came home to find Derek in an unusually good mood. He was in the kitchen cooking pasta, and he actually smiled when she walked in. "Hey," he said. "Thought I'd make us dinner tonight. We haven't had a nice meal together in a while." Naomi was immediately suspicious. Derek rarely cooked, and when he did, it was usually because he wanted something. She set her briefcase down and studied him carefully. That's nice, she said cautiously. What's the occasion? No occasion. Just thought we could use a quiet evening. Pour yourself some wine. Naomi poured a glass of water instead and sat at the kitchen table, watching Derek stir the sauce. She noticed his phone sitting face down beside the stove, and she saw it light up with a text notification. He quickly flipped it over and deleted the message. How was work? He asked, not turning around. Fine. Busy. Same here. I closed a big sale today. My boss was impressed. Naomi doubted this was true. Derek's sales numbers had been declining for months, something she knew because she'd quietly checked his employment records through a contact in HR at his company. But she said nothing. Let him have his illusions. They ate dinner in near silence, with Derek making occasional small talk about the weather and a basketball game he wanted to watch later. Naomi responded with short answers, her mind elsewhere. She was waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it did as soon as they finished eating. So, Derek said, pushing his plate away, I need to talk to you about something. What is it? I'm taking a trip next week. Vegas. Guy's trip with some buddies from the gym. We leave Tuesday and come back Sunday. Naomi raised an eyebrow. That's almost a week. What about work? I have the vacation days. Come on, Naomi, don't be difficult about this. I work hard. I deserve a break. She wanted to laugh. Derek had no idea what hard work looked like, but she simply nodded. Fine. Go on your trip. Really? He seemed surprised by her easy agreement. You're okay with it? Why wouldn't I be? You're a grown man. Do what you want. Derek grinned, clearly pleased. Great. I'll book the flights tonight. After dinner, Naomi went upstairs and immediately called the private investigator. Derek is planning a trip to Vegas next week, Tuesday through Sunday. I need you to follow him. Understood, the investigator replied. I'll arrange for one of my associates to track him there. Should be interesting. I'm sure it will be. Naomi ended the call and opened her laptop. She pulled up the joint checking account and saw that Derek had withdrawn $3,000 that morning. The account now had $5,000 remaining. She wasn't surprised. Derek had been slowly draining their joint account for months, probably funneling money to Brittany or saving up for his affair adventures. What Derek didn't understand was that this account was nothing. The real money, the millions Naomi had accumulated through her salary and bonuses and investments, sat in accounts he couldn't touch. Accounts he didn't even know existed. He thought he was being clever, stealing from her little by little, but he was only stealing from himself. Naomi made a decision. She transferred $2,000 from the joint account into her private account, leaving just $3,000. Then she sent Derek an email from her personal account, making it look like it came from the bank. Notice, account balance low. Please add funds to maintain minimum balance. She wanted to see what he would do when he discovered the money was gone. She wanted to watch him scramble. The next morning, Tuesday, Naomi woke to find Derek furious. He was standing in the bedroom doorway, his phone in his hand, his face red with anger. Did you take money out of our account? He demanded. Naomi sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. What are you talking about? The bank sent me a notice. There's only $3,000 in our checking account. Where's the rest of the money, Naomi? I don't know, Derek. Maybe you should check your withdrawals. You took out $3,000 yesterday, remember? His eyes narrowed. That was my money. I earned it. We both contribute to that account, she said calmly. If you want to track every dollar, we can do that. We can sit down and go through every withdrawal you've made over the past 6 months and see where all the money went. Derek faltered. He couldn't explain where the money had gone without admitting to his affair and his spending on Brittany. Forget it, he muttered. Just don't touch the account again without telling me. Sure, Derek. Whatever you say. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Naomi waited until she heard his car pull out of the driveway before she allowed herself to smile. The trap was working beautifully. At the office, Naomi met with her attorney Sandra for lunch. Sandra brought a briefcase full of documents, including the completed divorce petition. This is comprehensive, Sandra said, spreading the papers across the table. I've outlined all marital assets and made it clear which are yours alone under the prenuptial agreement. Derek signed a prenup before you married, correct? Yes. He barely read it, but he signed it. Good. That prenup protects everything you earned before the marriage and everything you've kept in separate accounts. The only jointly owned asset is the house, which is in both your names and the joint checking account. Everything else, your salary accounts, your investments, your retirement funds, those are yours alone. Naomi reviewed the papers carefully. What about the evidence of his affair? Sandra pulled out another folder. I've documented everything. The affair with Brittany, the financial abuse, the emotional abuse. We have photographs, bank statements, testimony from your private investigator. If this goes to trial, Derek will be destroyed. But I'm confident he'll settle once he sees what we have. When should we serve him? I'd recommend waiting until he's on his supposed Vegas trip. Serve him at the hotel with Brittany present. Maximum impact. Let him see that we know everything. Naomi considered this. Perfect. Do it. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings and interviews. Naomi was asked to speak at a tech conference in San Francisco the following month. She accepted. She was profiled in Forbes magazine. She agreed to the interview. 3 different venture capital firms reached out, wanting to discuss potential investments. She took the meetings. Her life was exploding in the best possible way, and Derek had no idea. He was too busy planning his Vegas trip with Brittany to notice that his wife was becoming one of the most talked about executives in the tech industry. On Saturday morning, Naomi received an email from the private investigator with an attachment. She opened it to find a series of photos taken the previous night. Derek and Brittany at a restaurant, holding hands across the table. Derek and Brittany in the parking lot of a hotel, kissing. Derek and Brittany entering a room together. The photos were time-stamped and geocoded. They were perfect evidence. Naomi forwarded the email to Sandra with a simple message: add these to the file. That afternoon, Derek came home with shopping bags. He'd bought new clothes for his Vegas trip, expensive designer items that Naomi knew he couldn't afford on his salary. He must have maxed out a credit card. She wondered if it was one of hers. Looking good, he said, trying on a new shirt in front of the bedroom mirror. I'm going to have a great time next week. I'm sure you will, Naomi replied. He looked at her, and for a moment, something like guilt flickered across his face. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. You're not mad? About the trip? Why would I be mad, Derek? I want you to be happy. Right. Good. He turned back to the mirror, admiring his reflection. Maybe when I get back, things can be different between us. Better. Naomi felt a wave of disgust. He was planning to come back from a week with his mistress and pretend to be a better husband. He thought she was stupid enough to fall for it. Maybe, she said neutrally. On Sunday evening, Naomi did something she'd been putting off. She drove to the luxury apartment building she'd been looking at and met with the leasing agent. The penthouse was even more beautiful in person than it had been in photos. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The kitchen had top-of-the-line appliances. The master bedroom was spacious and bright, with a walk-in closet bigger than her current bedroom. I'll take it, Naomi said. When can I move in? We can have you in by the end of the week, the leasing agent replied. Just need first month's rent and security deposit. Done. Naomi wrote the check without hesitation. This apartment cost $12,000 a month, more than Derek made in 4 months of sales. But she could afford it easily. She could afford anything she wanted now. As she drove home that evening, Naomi felt lighter than she had in years. The pieces were all falling into place. Derek was walking straight into the trap she'd set, and soon he would understand exactly what he'd lost. Tomorrow Derek would leave for Vegas. And while he was gone, Naomi would change the locks, move her belongings to her new apartment, and prepare for the final confrontation. The dirty water incident had been the breaking point, but this week would be the end. Derek had no idea what was coming. And Naomi couldn't wait to see his face when he finally figured it out. Derek left for Vegas on Tuesday morning, kissing Naomi on the cheek with false affection before hauling his designer luggage to an Uber. Naomi waved from the doorway, watching the car disappear down the street. As soon as it was out of sight, she pulled out her phone and made a call. He just left, she told Sandra. How quickly can we move? I've got movers standing by, Sandra replied. They'll be there in 2 hours. Pack what you want to keep and leave the rest. The locks will be changed by end of day. Perfect. Naomi walked back into the house and looked around with fresh eyes. She'd lived here for 5 years, but it had never really felt like home. It had been Derek's house, decorated with his tastes, filled with his things. She just existed in the spaces between his belongings, making herself small, taking up as little room as possible. Not anymore. She went upstairs and began packing systematically. Her clothes, her jewelry, her personal documents. Her laptop, her books, the few photographs that meant something to her. Everything else, all the furniture and decorations and kitchen items, she left behind. Derek could have it all. She was starting fresh. The movers arrived exactly on time, professional and efficient. Within 3 hours, they'd loaded everything Naomi wanted into a truck and departed for her new apartment. A locksmith came next, changing every lock on every door and window. Naomi paid him in cash and thanked him for his discretion. By 6 p.m., Naomi stood in her new penthouse apartment, surrounded by boxes but feeling freer than she'd felt in years. The evening sun streamed through the windows, bathing everything in cool, clear light. She walked to the window and looked out at the city below, feeling like she was seeing it for the first time. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from the private investigator. Subject has checked into Bellagio Hotel, room 2847. Female companion confirmed as Brittany Hayes. Currently at casino. Will continue surveillance. Naomi forwarded the message to Sandra along with a note. Serve him tomorrow night. I want maximum impact. The next morning, Wednesday, Naomi went into the office early. She had a meeting with the transition team from Henderson Global, and she wanted to be prepared. Julian Torres was already in the conference room when she arrived, reviewing documents. Morning, Naomi, he said, looking up with a smile. You're here early. Big day, she replied, setting down her briefcase. How are the integration plans coming? Smoothly, thanks to your groundwork. You know, I've been working in tech for 20 years and I've never seen a deal executed this cleanly. You have a real gift. Naomi felt warmth spread through her chest. Genuine compliments were rare in her life. Derek had never praised her accomplishments. It was nice to be appreciated for what she did well. Thank you, Julian. That means a lot. They spent the morning working through technical details and personnel transitions. Julian was intelligent and collaborative, asking for Naomi's input on every decision rather than assuming he knew better. It was refreshing to work with someone who saw her as an equal. During a break, Julian asked casually, Have you lived in the city long? 5 years. I actually just moved to a new apartment this week. Downtown near the office. Good area. Expensive though. I can manage, Naomi said with a small smile. Julian studied her for a moment. Can I ask you something personal? And feel free to tell me it's none of my business. Go ahead. Are you okay? I've noticed you seem stressed and I saw you weren't wearing your wedding ring today. If you're going through something difficult, I want you to know you have support. Professional support, I mean. We're colleagues now and colleagues look out for each other. Naomi looked down at her bare ring finger. She'd taken off her wedding ring that morning and hadn't realized how obvious it would be. I'm going through a divorce, she admitted. It's been coming for a while. I'm okay though. Actually, I'm better than okay. Julian nodded seriously. Divorce is hard even when it's the right choice. If you need anything, let me know. And I mean that. I appreciate it. They returned to work, but Naomi felt comforted by Julian's kindness. It reminded her that not all men were like Derek. There were good people in the world who treated others with respect. That afternoon, Naomi received a call from Sandra. We've got a problem. The private investigator found something during his surveillance in Vegas. What kind of something? Derek charged the entire Vegas trip to one of your credit cards. The one you keep for emergencies. He somehow got the number and has been using it for months. Hotels, restaurants, gifts for Brittany. We're talking about $47,000 in unauthorized charges. Naomi felt her jaw tighten. That's credit card fraud. Exactly. I've already contacted the credit card company and filed a fraud report. They're investigating. But Naomi, this is bigger than I thought. I had forensic accountant go through all your financial records. Derek has been systematically stealing from you for over a year. Small withdrawals from the joint account that he thought you wouldn't notice. Forged signatures on checks. He even tried to take out a home equity loan using your income information without your knowledge. The bank flagged it as suspicious and denied it, but Derek absolutely committed fraud. Naomi sat down, processing this information. How much total? Approximately $93,000 stolen over 18 months, plus the unauthorized credit card charges. If we press charges, Derek could face serious prison time. Do it. Press charges for everything. I want him to face consequences. Are you sure? This will get very ugly very public. I'm sure. He's been stealing from me while treating me like garbage. He poured dirty water on me, Sandra. He humiliated me in my own home. He deserves everything that's coming to him. Understood. I'll file the criminal complaints with the district attorney's office. Between the fraud, the identity theft, and the forgery, Derek is looking at multiple felonies. After ending the call, Naomi sat in her office, feeling a mixture of emotions. Anger at Derek's betrayal. vindication that her instincts had been correct. And underneath it all, a deep sadness that her marriage had come to this. But the sadness was fleeting. She'd mourned this relationship long ago, watching it deteriorate under the weight of Derek's ego and cruelty. What she felt now was primarily resolve. Derek had made his choices and now he would live with the consequences. Her phone buzzed with another text from the private investigator, this time with several attached photos. Derek and Brittany at an expensive restaurant, toasting with champagne. Derek and Brittany shopping on the Vegas Strip. Derek carrying multiple designer shopping bags. Derek and Brittany by the hotel pool, Brittany wearing a new diamond bracelet that sparkled in the sunlight. All of it paid for with Naomi's money. All of it while Derek thought she was too stupid to notice. The final photo made Naomi's blood run cold. It showed Derek and Brittany at what appeared to be a jewelry store, looking at engagement rings. Derek was smiling, pointing at a large diamond. Brittany was laughing, her hand on his arm. He was planning to propose. With Naomi's money. While still married to Naomi. Naomi forwarded the photos to Sandra with a message. Add this to the evidence. Serve him tonight. Don't wait. 2 hours later, Sandra called back. It's done. Process server found them at the hotel. Derek has been served with divorce papers and notice of criminal charges. The police in Vegas are holding him for questioning about the credit card fraud. It's all moving very fast now. Good. How did he react? According to the process server, he went pale and started yelling. Brittany apparently fled the room. It was quite a scene. Derek tried to call you multiple times from the hotel, but I assume you're not answering. Naomi looked at her phone and saw 15 missed calls from Derek's number, along with a flood of text messages. She didn't read them. She didn't care what he had to say. Let him call, Naomi said. I have nothing to say to him. That evening, as Naomi unpacked boxes in her new apartment, she received a call from an unknown number. She answered, curious. Naomi? It's Derek. Please, you have to listen to me. How did you get this number? I called your office. The receptionist gave it to me. Naomi, this is all a huge misunderstanding. Those divorce papers, those criminal charges, it's crazy. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out, Derek. You stole from me. You committed fraud. You had an affair. It's over. I never stole from you. That was our money, our joint account. No, Derek. It was my money that I put in a joint account. Money you systematically stole while spending it on your mistress. And let's not forget the $47,000 you charged to my credit card without permission. That's a crime. I was going to pay it back. With what money? You were fired from your job 6 months ago. Don't bother denying it. I know everything. There was silence on the other end. Finally, Derek spoke, his voice small. How do you know that? I know a lot of things, Derek. I know you've been lying about going to work every day. I know you've been living off my income while telling me I'm worthless. I know Brittany has been supporting you with money from her own questionable activities. I know about the jewelry store in Vegas and the engagement ring you were planning to buy. With my money. Naomi, please. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. Come on. 5 years of marriage has to count for something. It did count for something. It taught me that I deserve better. It taught me that I don't need to make myself small for anyone. And it taught me exactly what happens when you underestimate someone. What are you talking about? Underestimate you? Naomi felt a cold satisfaction spread through her. Derek, do you even know what I do for a living? You're an administrative assistant or something. Why does it matter? I'm the executive vice president of Quantum Tech Solutions. I just closed a $20 billion deal. My face has been on the cover of every major business publication for the past week. I make $2.3 million a year and I just earned a $50 million bonus. While you were pouring dirty water on me, I was becoming one of the most powerful executives in the tech industry. The silence on the other end was absolute. Naomi could practically hear Derek's world shattering. That's impossible, he finally whispered. Look it up. Forbes, Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch. My name is everywhere. The woman you treated like garbage, the woman you called worthless, she's been supporting you for years while you sat around pretending to have a job. You've been living in my house, eating food I paid for, using money I earned, all while telling me I was nothing. I didn't know. Naomi, I swear I didn't know. You didn't know because you never bothered to ask. You never cared about my life, my work, my dreams. You only cared about yourself. And now you're going to pay for it. The divorce will go through and you'll get nothing because of the prenup you signed. The criminal charges will proceed because you committed actual crimes. and I'm going to move on with my life while you deal with the consequences of your choices. Please, Naomi. Don't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sure you are. But sorry doesn't undo the damage, Derek. Sorry doesn't erase the dirty water or the insults or the affair or the theft. Sorry is just a word people say when they finally realize they're caught. She hung up. Naomi stood by the window of her penthouse, looking out at the city lights, and felt something settle inside her. This was closure. This was the moment when she finally took back her power. Her phone rang again, but this time it was her mother. Naomi, honey, I just saw the news about your divorce. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. Actually, I'm great. I saw those articles about your job. Baby, why didn't you tell me you were doing so well? I had no idea. I kept it quiet. It's a long story. Are you safe? Is Derek giving you trouble? Derek is in Vegas dealing with some legal problems. He won't be bothering me. Good. You come home whenever you need to, okay? Your father and I are proud of you. So proud. After hanging up, Naomi poured herself a glass of wine and sat on her balcony, breathing in the cool night air. She thought about Derek in his Vegas hotel room, his perfect trip ruined, his carefully constructed lies falling apart. She thought about Brittany, probably running as fast as she could from the legal mess Derek had created. But mostly, Naomi thought about herself and the future stretching out before her. A future without compromise, without cruelty, without making herself small. A future where she could be exactly who she was, powerful and successful and free. The investigation had revealed Derek's true nature. Now it was time for Naomi to reveal her own. Derek returned from Vegas 3 days later, escorted to the airport by police after posting bail for the fraud charges. The authorities had seized his laptop and phone as evidence, and he'd spent 12 hours being interrogated. By the time he made it back to the city, he looked haggard and defeated, nothing like the arrogant man who'd left for his romantic getaway. His first stop was the house, but the locks had been changed. He stood on the front porch, trying his key over and over, growing increasingly frantic when it wouldn't turn. Naomi knew this because she'd had security cameras installed, and she watched him from her phone while sitting in her new apartment. Derek pounded on the door. Naomi, open up. This is my house too. But no one answered because no one was there. Naomi had taken what she wanted, and the house stood empty except for Derek's belongings. Eventually, Derek gave up and called a locksmith. While he waited, he tried calling Naomi again, but she'd blocked his number. He sent emails that went to her spam folder. He even tried showing up at Quantum Tech Solutions, but building security refused to let him past the lobby. I'm her husband. Derek shouted at the security guard. You have to let me up. Sir, we have strict instructions. You're not authorized to be in this building. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. Derek left, but not before causing enough of a scene that people noticed. A video of him yelling in the lobby ended up on social media, and several tech blogs picked up the story. Executive's estranged husband has meltdown at Quantum Tech. Meanwhile, Naomi focused on her work and her new life. The transition from Henderson Global was going smoothly, and she spent most of her days in meetings with Julian and his team. They worked well together, finding a rhythm that made the complex integration feel almost easy. One afternoon, as they wrapped up a particularly productive meeting, Julian asked if she'd like to grab coffee. Just coffee, he clarified quickly. I know you're going through a divorce and I'm not trying to complicate things. But I enjoy talking to you and I think we could be friends. If that's something you'd be interested in. Naomi smiled. Coffee sounds good. They walked to a cafe near the office and sat by the window watching the city bustle past. For the first time in weeks, Naomi felt herself relax. Julian didn't ask prying questions about her divorce. Instead, they talked about work, about the industry, about their career paths. He told her about his 2 teenage daughters and his divorce 5 years ago. She found herself laughing at his stories, enjoying the easy conversation. You're different from what I expected, Julian admitted. When I first heard about you, I thought you'd be this intimidating corporate warrior. But you're thoughtful and kind. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, obviously, but they're rare to find in the same person at this level. I've learned to be strategic, Naomi said. But I've never wanted to lose my humanity in the process. Too many executives confuse cruelty with strength. Agreed. I've worked with plenty of brilliant jerks in my career. It's refreshing to work with someone who's brilliant and decent. As they talked, Naomi felt something shift inside her. For years, she'd believed Derek's narrative that she was difficult to love, that her career made her cold and distant. But here was Julian, a successful executive in his own right, treating her like she was both competent and likable. Maybe the problem had never been her. Maybe the problem had always been Derek. That evening, Naomi received a call from Sandra with an update on the legal proceedings. Derek's attorney tried to negotiate. He wants to settle the divorce quickly, and he's willing to walk away without fighting for assets if you'll drop the criminal charges. Absolutely not, Naomi said firmly. He committed crimes. He needs to face consequences. That's what I told them. Derek's attorney seemed desperate. I think he knows how bad this looks. The evidence is overwhelming, and the district attorney is eager to prosecute. White-collar crime, identity theft, fraud, it's all there. Derek could be looking at 5 to 7 years in prison. Good. There's more. The investigation into Brittany has revealed some interesting things. She's been running a credit card fraud scheme for the past 2 years. She targets wealthy men, gets access to their financial information, and then runs up charges. Derek was just one of several victims, though ironically, most of the charges on your card were authorized by Derek himself. Brittany is facing her own criminal charges now. Naomi absorbed this information. So Derek wasn't just having an affair. He was the mark in a con. Essentially, yes. Though he also victimized you independently, so he's not innocent by any means. But Brittany saw him as an easy target, a man with a successful wife who kept separate finances. She probably thought she could eventually get access to your real money through Derek. She underestimated me. They both did. Over the next few days, more details emerged about Derek's life. The private investigator delivered a comprehensive report that painted a damning picture. Derek had been fired from his sales job not just for poor performance but for sexual harassment. 3 women at his company had filed complaints about inappropriate comments and unwanted advances. The company had settled quietly to avoid publicity, but they terminated Derek immediately. For the past 6 months, Derek had been pretending to go to work every day. Instead, he'd been spending his time at Brittany's apartment, gambling online, and spending Naomi's money. He'd racked up $23,000 in gambling debts, which explained some of the missing money from their joint account. Brittany, for her part, had been juggling relationships with 4 different men simultaneously, all of whom she was defrauding. The police investigation into her activities was extensive, and prosecutors expected to bring charges involving over $300,000 in stolen funds. They deserve each other, Naomi told Sandra on the phone. 2 frauds who found each other. The interesting part is that Derek seems genuinely shocked that Brittany was using him. According to his attorney, Derek thought their relationship was real. He had no idea she was conning him the whole time. Naomi felt no sympathy. Derek had been willing to destroy his marriage and steal from his wife for Brittany. The fact that Brittany hadn't actually loved him was poetic justice. The following week, Naomi attended a tech industry gala. It was a formal event celebrating the biggest deals of the year, and the Quantum Henderson merger was being recognized as the standout achievement. Naomi wore a stunning emerald dress and carried herself with quiet confidence. Julian was there too, and they ended up sitting at the same table during dinner. When Naomi's name was called for the award, the entire room stood and applauded. She walked to the stage, accepted the crystal trophy, and gave a brief speech about perseverance and believing in yourself even when others don't. As she returned to her seat, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she checked it. I saw you on TV at that awards thing. You look beautiful. I miss you. Please call me. Derek. Naomi deleted the message without responding. Derek had found a new phone number, but she wasn't going to engage. She had nothing to say to him. After the gala, Julian walked her to her car. Congratulations on the award. You earned it. Thank you. It's been quite a year. I know this might be forward, Julian said, hesitating slightly. But would you like to have dinner sometime? Not a work dinner. An actual date. I like you, Naomi, and I think you might like me too. But I understand if you're not ready. Divorce is complicated. Naomi looked at him, this kind, respectful man who saw her for who she truly was. She thought about Derek and the years she'd wasted trying to make herself small enough for his ego. She thought about the dirty water and the humiliation and the betrayal. I'd like that, she said. A date sounds nice. Julian's face lit up. Yeah, that's great. How about Saturday? Saturday works. That night, lying in her new bed in her new apartment, Naomi reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. Derek had thought he was in control, thought he could steal and cheat and humiliate without consequences. But he'd walked straight into a trap of his own making. Every cruel word he'd spoken, every dollar he'd stolen, Every moment with Brittany, it had all been documented and used against him. He'd underestimated Naomi completely, assumed she was weak and ignorant and powerless. That assumption had destroyed him. Meanwhile, Naomi had been quietly building an empire. She'd protected her assets, gathered evidence, and positioned herself for success. The trap hadn't been something she'd set maliciously. It had been the natural consequence of Derek's own choices combined with Naomi's strategic thinking. Derek had poured dirty water on her, thinking he was washing away her worth. Instead, he'd washed away his own future. And Naomi was just getting started. Saturday arrived, and Naomi found herself looking forward to her date with Julian for the first time in years. She felt excited about spending time with someone. She chose a simple but elegant black dress and minimal jewelry, wanting to look nice without overdoing it. Julian picked her up at 7, and they went to an intimate Italian restaurant with exposed brick walls and soft lighting. The atmosphere was warm without being overbearing, bright enough to feel comfortable. "I have to admit," Julian said as they looked at the menus, "I've been looking forward to this all week." "Me too," Naomi replied honestly. "It's been a while since I've done anything just for myself." They talked easily throughout dinner, the conversation flowing naturally from work to family to their favorite books and movies. Julian was intelligent without being condescending, funny without trying too hard. He asked about her life, really listened to her answers, and shared his own experiences in return. "Can I ask what went wrong in your marriage?" Julian said carefully. "You don't have to answer if it's too personal." Naomi considered how much to share. "My husband never saw me as an equal. He needed to feel superior, so I made myself smaller to accommodate his ego. I hid my success, downplayed my achievements, and let him believe he was the important one. And in return, he treated me terribly. That must have been exhausting." "It was. But it also taught me something important. I'll never hide who I am again. Not for anyone." "You shouldn't have to," Julian said firmly. "The right person will celebrate your success, not feel threatened by it." They finished dinner and walked through the downtown area, enjoying the cool evening air. Naomi felt lighter than she had in years, unburdened by the weight of pretending to be less than she was. Her phone buzzed insistently in her purse. She ignored it until Julian noticed. "Do you need to get that?" "It's probably Derek. He's been trying to reach me all week." "That must be difficult." "Not really. I have nothing to say to him." But when they returned to her building, Naomi checked her messages and found 23 missed calls from Derek and a voicemail marked urgent. Against her better judgment, she listened to it. "Naomi, please. The police are talking about pressing charges on Monday. My attorney says I could go to prison for years. You have to help me. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. Call me back. Please." Naomi deleted the message and looked at Julian. "Sorry about that." "Don't apologize. Divorce is messy, especially when someone's facing criminal charges. He brought it on himself. He stole from me, committed fraud, and had an affair. Now he wants my help avoiding the consequences." Julian nodded thoughtfully. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing. He made his choices. I'm not going to save him from them." That night, after Julian left, Naomi received a call from an unexpected source. It was Derek's mother, Carol, a woman Naomi had always gotten along with despite Derek's behavior. "Naomi, honey, I hope you don't mind me calling. Derek gave me your new number." "Hi, Carol. What can I do for you?" "I heard about the divorce and the charges. Naomi, I'm not calling to defend Derek. What he did to you was awful. I'm calling because I want you to know that I don't blame you for any of this." Naomi felt tears prick her eyes. Carol's kindness was unexpected. "Thank you. That means a lot. Derek's father and I raised him better than this. I don't know where we went wrong, but watching him throw away his marriage and break the law, it's heartbreaking. You were always too good for him, Naomi. I told him that, but he never listened. I appreciate you saying that. I also want you to know that I saw your picture in the newspaper. That big business deal you made. Naomi, I'm so proud of you. I always knew you were special. I'm sorry Derek couldn't see it." After they hung up, Naomi sat on her couch and let herself feel the full weight of everything that had happened. Her marriage was ending, her husband was facing prison, and her entire life had been turned upside down. But underneath all the chaos, she felt something unexpected: relief. The next morning, Sunday, the bombshell hit. A major investigative journalist had written an exposé about Brittany's fraud ring, and it named Derek as one of her co-conspirators. The article detailed how Brittany had been running a sophisticated credit card fraud operation and how she'd used romantic relationships to access victims' financial information. Derek's name appeared multiple times, described as both a victim and a willing participant who'd helped Brittany access his wife's credit cards. The article included quotes from prosecutors. Derek Patterson knew what he was doing. He might have been manipulated by Ms. Hayes initially, but he actively participated in defrauding his own wife. The evidence shows he forged her signature, stole her credit cards, and made unauthorized charges. He's not just a victim here. He's a perpetrator. Within hours, the story was everywhere. It spread across social media, business news sites, and tech blogs. Naomi's phone exploded with messages from colleagues and friends who'd seen the article and wanted to make sure she was okay. The article also included background on Naomi herself, describing her as a rising star in the tech industry who'd recently closed a historic $20 billion deal. There was a quote from an unnamed source: "Naomi Patterson is brilliant and driven. While she was busy making deals that shaped the tech industry, her husband was literally stealing from her bank accounts." The contrast is stark. Naomi read the article twice, processing how her private pain had become public knowledge. Part of her was mortified by the exposure, but another part felt vindicated. The world now knew what Derek had done, knew that she hadn't been weak or stupid, knew that she'd been the victim of a calculated betrayal. Her phone rang. It was Sandra. "Have you seen the article?" "Yes." "How did they get all that information?" "Public court records, police reports, interviews with prosecutors. It's all technically public information once charges are filed." "I'm sorry it went public like this. I know it wasn't what you wanted." "Actually," Naomi said slowly, "I think it's good. Now Derek can't control the narrative. Everyone knows the truth." Speaking of Derek, his attorney called this morning in a panic. They want to negotiate a plea deal. Derek is willing to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for dropping the identity theft and forgery counts. He'd serve 2 years in prison instead of 5 to 7. What do the prosecutors think? They're willing to consider it. The evidence is solid, so they don't necessarily need a trial. But they want your input. You're the victim here. Naomi thought carefully. 2 years felt like a light sentence for everything Derek had done. But she was also exhausted by the constant legal drama. What happens to the divorce if he's in prison? It proceeds normally. We can finalize everything while he's incarcerated. He'd have no access to you during that time. Then I'll agree to the plea deal on one condition. Derek has to pay restitution for every penny he stole, plus interest. And he has to issue a written apology that gets entered into the court record. I'll make sure that's part of the agreement." After hanging up with Sandra, Naomi received a text from Julian. "Saw the article. I'm sorry you're going through this. Here if you need to talk." She appreciated his support but didn't want to burden him with more drama. They'd only just started dating. Instead, she texted back, "Thank you. I'm okay. Looking forward to seeing you again soon." That afternoon, as Naomi was unpacking more boxes in her apartment, there was a knock at her door. She looked through the peephole and saw Derek standing in the hallway, looking desperate and disheveled. "Naomi, please open the door. I know you're in there. I can hear you moving around." She didn't respond, didn't move. "I read the article. Everyone thinks I'm a monster. Naomi, you have to help me. Tell them it's not true. Tell them I didn't know what I was doing." Still, Naomi said nothing. "I know I hurt you. I know I was terrible. But we were married for 5 years. Doesn't that mean anything? Don't you have any compassion?" Naomi walked to the door and spoke through it, her voice calm and clear. "Derek, you poured dirty water on me. You stole my money. You cheated on me. You called me worthless. You tried to humiliate me and destroy my self-worth. And now you want compassion? The answer is no. Accept the plea deal your attorney negotiated. Serve your time. And move on with your life because I'm done with you. You can't do this to me. I didn't do this to you. You did this to yourself. Now leave before I call building security." Derek stood outside her door for another 5 minutes, alternating between begging and threatening. Finally, she heard him leave, his footsteps heavy on the hallway floor. Naomi returned to unpacking, feeling surprisingly calm. The revelation of Derek's crimes had been uncomfortable, but it had also freed her from any lingering guilt or doubt. She'd done nothing wrong. She'd been the victim of a cruel, selfish man who'd gotten exactly what he deserved. That evening, she received an email from the CEO of Quantum Tech Solutions. "Naomi, I wanted to reach out personally after today's news. The board and I stand behind you completely. What you've endured is unconscionable, and the fact that you've handled it with such grace while continuing to excel professionally is a testament to your character. Please know that you have our full support. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to ask. Thomas. Naomi read the email 3 times, feeling grateful for her professional family. They'd been more supportive than she could have hoped, never making her feel ashamed or diminished by her personal situation. She poured herself a glass of wine and stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. In a strange way, the public revelation had been cathartic. She no longer had to carry the secret of Derek's betrayal alone. The world knew, and the world had sided with her. Derek had tried to make her feel small, tried to convince her she was nothing. But the revelation had shown everyone the truth. She was extraordinary and he was ordinary. She was successful and he was a criminal. She was moving forward and he was going to prison. The dirty water he'd poured on her hadn't washed her away. It had only made her stronger. And tomorrow she would wake up in her beautiful apartment, go to her powerful job and continue building the life she deserved. Derek would wake up to face the consequences of his choices. And Naomi wouldn't think about him at all. Derek's plea deal was finalized on a Wednesday morning in a courtroom downtown. Naomi didn't attend the hearing, but Sandra called her immediately afterward to report the details. He pled guilty to credit card fraud and theft. 2 years in state prison with possibility of parole after 18 months. He has to pay you back $93,000 plus interest, and he read a written apology into the court record. What did the apology say? The basics. He acknowledged stealing from you, betraying your trust, and causing you harm. He said he takes full responsibility for his actions. The judge seemed satisfied. When does he start serving time? 30 days. He'll report to the facility in December. Naomi hung up and returned to the spreadsheet she'd been reviewing. She felt nothing about Derek's sentencing. No satisfaction, no anger, no sadness. He'd become irrelevant to her, just a problem that had been solved and filed away. Meanwhile, Brittany's case was proceeding separately. She faced more serious charges involving multiple victims and organized fraud. Her trial was scheduled for early next year, and prosecutors expected her to receive a sentence of 5 to 8 years. The women she'd defrauded were cooperating with the investigation, and the evidence against her was overwhelming. Naomi had been asked to testify at Brittany's trial, but she'd declined. "I have nothing to say to that woman," she told the prosecutor. "My statements are in the police report." "That's enough." The prosecutor understood. "We have plenty of evidence without your testimony. If you want to avoid the circus, that's your right." As Derek's world crumbled, Naomi's continued to rise. She was promoted again, this time to Chief Strategy Officer, a newly created position that put her in charge of all major acquisitions and partnerships. Her salary increased to $3.2 million annually, and she received additional stock options worth millions more. The Henderson global integration was going smoothly, exceeding all projected benchmarks. Julian and his team had relocated to the city permanently, and Julian had become a fixture in Naomi's life. They had dinner twice a week, attended industry events together, and spent lazy Sunday mornings drinking coffee and reading the newspaper. One evening, about 6 weeks after their first date, Julian brought wine to Naomi's apartment and they cooked dinner together. As they worked side by side in her kitchen, chopping vegetables and stirring sauce, Naomi realized how comfortable she'd become with him. "I need to tell you something," Julian said, setting down his knife. "I'm falling for you, Naomi. I know it's fast and I know you're still dealing with your divorce, but I can't keep pretending this is just casual for me. I think about you all the time. I want to be with you." Naomi felt her heart beat faster. "I'm falling for you too. I didn't expect it to happen this quickly, but it has. You're different from anyone I've ever been with. You see me, really see me, and you don't need me to be smaller or quieter or less successful." "Never," Julian said firmly. "I love that you're brilliant and ambitious. It doesn't threaten me. It inspires me." They kissed in the kitchen, surrounded by half-prepared dinner, and Naomi felt something she hadn't felt in years. Genuine happiness untainted by fear or doubt. Later that night, as they ate dinner on her balcony under the stars, Julian asked about her plans for the future. "I want to start a foundation," Naomi admitted. "Something to help women who are trapped in financially abusive relationships. I want to provide resources, legal assistance, financial planning. I want to help other women become independent the way I did." "That's a beautiful idea. Have you thought about what you'd call it?" "The Phoenix Foundation. Because these women are rising from the ashes of their old lives." "I love it. And I'd like to help if you'll let me. Not with money necessarily, though I'm happy to contribute. But with planning, strategy, connections. Let's build this together." Naomi smiled. "I'd like that." While Naomi built her future, Derek's fell apart piece by piece. His parents stopped taking his calls after he tried to guilt them into paying his legal fees. His few remaining friends distanced themselves once the news of his crimes became public. He lost his apartment when he couldn't pay rent and ended up sleeping on a friend's couch until that friend also kicked him out. 3 weeks before he was scheduled to report to prison, Derek made one final attempt to reach Naomi. He showed up at Quantum Tech Solutions again, but this time he made it past security by claiming to have a delivery. He took the elevator to the 23rd floor and found Naomi's office. Claire, her assistant, intercepted him immediately. "Sir, you can't be here. I need to talk to my wife. Miss Patterson has made it clear she doesn't want contact with you. I'm calling security." Derek pushed past Claire and barged into Naomi's office. She was on a video call with the board, visible on the large monitor behind her desk. She looked up, startled, then quickly composed herself. "Excuse me for one moment," she said to the board, muting the call. She turned to Derek with cold eyes. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to see you." To explain. "Naomi, I'm going to prison in 3 weeks. This is your last chance to forgive me, to help me." "I don't want to forgive you and I'm not going to help you. Leave." "You're really going to let me go to prison? After everything we had?" "Everything we had was a lie, Derek. You never loved me. You loved having someone you could control and demean. You loved feeling superior. But I was never less than you. I was always more and you couldn't handle it. I made mistakes, but you destroyed my life. You ruined everything." "No, Derek. You destroyed your own life. You stole, you cheated, you lied. Those were your choices. I simply refused to let you get away with it." Security arrived then, 2 large men who took Derek by the arms and escorted him out. He was shouting as they dragged him to the elevator, creating a scene that half the office witnessed. After he was gone, Naomi unmuted her video call. "I apologize for the interruption. That was my ex-husband. He's being dealt with." Thomas, the CEO, spoke up. "Naomi, do you need to press additional charges? That looked like harassment to me. I think he's learned his lesson. He reports to prison in 3 weeks. That's consequence enough." After the meeting ended, Julian appeared at her door. He'd heard about the incident and came to check on her. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Actually, I feel good. Derek just showed me that I made the right choice. He's still the same person, still entitled and delusional. Prison might humble him, but I doubt it. You handled it with impressive calm." "I've had practice." That evening, as they left the office together, Naomi's phone rang. It was Sandra with unexpected news. Derek tried to file an appeal claiming the plea deal was coerced. The judge threw it out. Derek's attorney has withdrawn from the case, saying Derek is impossible to work with. He's going to prison and he's burned every bridge he had. "Good," Naomi said simply. "There's more." Brittany's attorney reached out. She wants to testify against Derek in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's claiming Derek was the mastermind behind everything, that he manipulated her into stealing from you. Naomi laughed, actually laughed. "That's absurd. Derek isn't smart enough to mastermind anything. He was her mark." "That's what I told the prosecutor. They're not buying Brittany's story. She's going to trial and she'll likely serve the full sentence. These two deserve each other. They're both liars who refuse to take responsibility for their actions." The next few weeks passed quickly. Naomi focused on her work and her relationship with Julian, deliberately putting Derek out of her mind. She met with architects about the Phoenix Foundation headquarters, reviewed applications for the first round of grants, and began assembling an advisory board of financial experts and therapists. On the day Derek was scheduled to report to prison, Naomi didn't think about him at all. She was too busy giving a keynote speech at a major tech conference, speaking to 3,000 people about leadership and resilience. The audience gave her a standing ovation, and afterward, dozens of people approached her to share their own stories of overcoming adversity. That night, Julian took her to dinner at the restaurant where they'd had their first date. "I have something for you," he said, pulling out a small box. Naomi's heart jumped. "Julian?" "It's not what you think," he said with a smile. "Not yet. Open it." Inside was a key on a simple silver chain. "It's a key to my house," Julian explained. "I know you have your beautiful apartment, but I want you to have a place at my home too. No pressure to move in or change anything. Just know that you're always welcome, always wanted." Naomi felt tears in her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." As they walked back to her apartment later, hand in hand, Naomi reflected on how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been standing in her old house, drenched in dirty water, believing she was worthless. Now she was a powerful executive, a philanthropist, and a woman in love with a good man who treated her with respect. Derek had tried to break her. Instead, he'd freed her. His cruelty had been the catalyst she needed to finally stop hiding and start living authentically. In trying to destroy her, he'd actually saved her. And while Derek sat in a prison cell, paying for his crimes, Naomi stood on her balcony under the stars, grateful for the woman she'd become and excited for the future ahead. The unraveling of Derek's life was complete. But Naomi's life was just beginning. 3 months after Derek entered prison, Naomi stood in the empty loft space that would soon house the Phoenix Foundation. The building was in a revitalized neighborhood near downtown, with high ceilings, exposed brick, and massive windows that flooded the space with natural light. She could picture it already. Desks where financial counselors would meet with clients, a library of resources, a childcare room for mothers who needed it, conference rooms for legal consultations. "It's perfect," Julian said, standing beside her. He'd taken a personal interest in the foundation, helping Naomi navigate the nonprofit paperwork and connecting her with potential donors. "I can't believe this is real," Naomi admitted. "6 months ago I was hiding my success and living in fear. Now I'm building something that might help thousands of women." "You were always capable of this. You just needed to believe in yourself." The Phoenix Foundation officially launched in March with a gala fundraiser that drew over 500 attendees. Business leaders, politicians, journalists, and activists filled the ballroom of a downtown hotel, all there to support Naomi's vision. She gave a speech that brought many in the audience to tears, sharing her story without naming Derek or going into graphic detail. "I know what it's like to feel trapped," she told the crowd. "I know what it's like to have someone control your finances, diminish your worth, and make you believe you're nothing without them. But I also know what it's like to escape, to rebuild, and to discover that you were always enough." The Phoenix Foundation exists to help other women make that same journey. We provide financial literacy training, legal assistance, emergency funds, and emotional support. We help women leave abusive situations and build independent lives. Because every woman deserves to live without fear. The applause was thunderous. By the end of the evening, the foundation had raised $3.7 million in donations and pledges. Naomi was overwhelmed by the generosity and support. Julian found her later, standing alone on the balcony outside the ballroom. "That speech was incredible. You're incredible. I feel like I'm finally doing something that matters. Don't get me wrong, I love my work at Quantum. But this, helping women escape what I escaped, this feels like my real purpose." You can do both. You're proof that women don't have to choose between professional success and meaningful service. Over the next few months, the foundation began serving clients. The first woman who walked through their doors was named Angela, a 42-year-old mother of 3 whose husband controlled every aspect of her financial life. She had no bank account, no credit cards, no money of her own. Her husband gave her cash for groceries and demanded receipts for every purchase. Naomi met with Angela personally, seeing her own past reflected in this woman's eyes. They worked together to create a plan, opening a secret bank account, documenting the financial abuse, connecting Angela with an attorney, and ultimately helping her leave safely with her children. 6 weeks later, Angela sent Naomi a photo of herself standing in front of her own apartment, holding keys and smiling. "Thank you for giving me my life back," the text message read. Naomi cried when she received it. This was why the foundation mattered. This was what she'd been meant to do. Meanwhile, her relationship with Julian deepened. They spent most nights together either at her apartment or his house. They cooked meals, watched movies, took weekend trips to the mountains. Julian met Naomi's parents when they visited from Atlanta, and they adored him. "This is what love should look like," her mother whispered to Naomi. "Equal partners who lift each other up." Naomi's divorce was finalized in April, exactly 1 year after the dirty water incident. She felt nothing but relief when Sandra called with the news. "It's official. You're no longer married to Derek Patterson. The house has been sold, and the proceeds are in your account after paying off the remaining mortgage. Derek gets nothing per the prenup. He's also been ordered to continue paying restitution once he's released from prison." "Thank you for everything, Sandra. I couldn't have done this without you. You did the hard part, Naomi. You were brave enough to leave and smart enough to protect yourself. I just handled the paperwork." That evening, Naomi and Julian celebrated her freedom with champagne and takeout Chinese food. They sat on her living room floor, laughing and making plans for the future. "I have something to tell you," Julian said, suddenly serious. "I've been offered a position as Chief Technology Officer at Quantum. Thomas approached me last week. I'd be working directly with you on strategic initiatives. Naomi's eyes widened. Are you going to take it? I want to. But I wanted to make sure you were comfortable with it first. I don't want to complicate your work life or make things awkward. Julian, that's amazing. You'd be perfect for that role, and yes, I'm completely comfortable with it. We're professionals. We can work together and be together. He grinned. Good. Because I already accepted. They both laughed, and Naomi felt a surge of happiness. Everything was coming together. Her career was thriving, her foundation was helping people, and she was in a healthy, loving relationship with a man who respected and supported her. In May, Naomi received an unexpected letter. It was from Derek, written from prison. She almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of her. She opened it carefully, prepared for more manipulation or blame. The letter was surprisingly brief. Naomi, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. I've had a lot of time to think in here, and I've realized some hard truths. I was wrong about everything. I was wrong to steal from you, wrong to cheat on you, wrong to treat you the way I did. I poured dirty water on you because I felt small and wanted to make you feel smaller. But you were never small. You were always bigger than me in every way that mattered. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost and why I lost it. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. Derek. Naomi read the letter twice, then folded it and put it in a drawer. She didn't respond, didn't need to. Derek's acknowledgement of his mistakes didn't change anything, didn't undo the damage he'd caused. But it was a form of closure, knowing that he finally understood the magnitude of his failure. She never thought about Derek again. In June, the Phoenix Foundation received national media attention when a major news network did a segment on their work. They interviewed several women who'd been helped by the foundation, including Angela, and featured Naomi as the founder who'd turned her own painful experience into a force for good. The segment ended with Naomi standing in the foundation's office, surrounded by her team of counselors and lawyers and volunteers. We're just getting started, she told the reporter. There are millions of women trapped in financially abusive relationships. We're going to help as many of them as we can. Applications for the foundation's services tripled after the segment aired. Donations poured in. Other cities reached out, wanting to start their own Phoenix Foundation chapters. Naomi hired a director of operations to help manage the growth, and they began training counselors in other states. One evening in July, Julian and Naomi were having dinner on her balcony when he said, I've been thinking about something. What's that? We've been together almost a year now. We spend every night together, we work together, we're building a life together. I love you, Naomi. I want to make this official, not in a marriage way necessarily, but in a commitment way. I want us to find a place together, somewhere that's ours, not yours or mine but ours. Naomi felt her heart swell. I'd like that. But I have one condition. What's that? We find a place where we're equals in every way. Equal on the deed, equal in decisions, equal in everything. Julian took her hand. I wouldn't want it any other way. They spent the next month looking at houses and condos, finally settling on a beautiful townhouse with a rooftop deck and a view of the city skyline. They moved in together in September, combining their furniture and their lives. Naomi had never been happier. She woke up next to someone who loved and respected her. She went to work where she was valued and appreciated. She spent her evenings running a foundation that changed lives. She had friends, family, purpose, and peace. The woman who'd stood in a kitchen drenched in dirty water felt like a different person, someone from another life. That woman had been defeated and diminished. This woman, the one Naomi had become, was powerful and whole. Derek had tried to destroy her, but he'd only destroyed himself. And while he served out his sentence in prison, counting down the days until his release, Naomi lived freely and fully, grateful for every moment of her hard-won happiness. The rebuild was complete. Naomi Patterson had risen from the ashes, and she was never going back to who she used to be. The leaves were turning gold and red when Naomi stood at the podium of the annual Women in Technology Conference, preparing to give the keynote address. 2,000 women filled the convention center, all of them professionals and entrepreneurs looking for inspiration. Naomi looked out at their faces and felt the weight of responsibility. A year and a half ago, she began, I was living a double life. At work, I was a successful executive closing billion-dollar deals. At home, I was a woman who let herself be diminished and controlled because I thought keeping the peace was more important than asserting my worth. I hid my achievements from my husband because his ego couldn't handle my success. I made myself small so he could feel big. And in return, he treated me with cruelty and contempt. The room was completely silent. Every woman was listening intently. The turning point came on a night when I returned home after closing a $20 billion deal. Instead of being met with congratulations or even basic respect, my husband poured a bucket of dirty water over my head. He called me worthless while I stood there, dripping and humiliated. And in that moment, something inside me changed. I realized I was done shrinking for anyone. Naomi went on to share her story of leaving, rebuilding, and founding the Phoenix Foundation. She talked about the importance of financial independence, the courage required to walk away from abuse, and the joy of living authentically. By the time she finished, many in the audience were openly crying. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, women lined up to speak with her, to share their own stories, to thank her for her honesty. One young woman, barely out of college, told Naomi, "I just started dating someone who makes me feel bad about my career success. Your story made me realize I need to end it now before I waste years trying to make him comfortable with who I am." "Good," Naomi said firmly. "Never apologize for your achievements. The right person will celebrate them with you." That evening, Naomi returned home to find Julian cooking dinner in their kitchen. He'd made her favorite meal, salmon with roasted vegetables, and he'd set the table with candles. "How was the speech?" he asked, kissing her hello. "Powerful. Emotional. I think it resonated with people." "I'm sure it did. You have a gift for connecting with people, for making them feel seen and understood." They ate dinner on their rooftop deck, wrapped in sweaters against the cool autumn air. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling like stars. "I got some interesting news today," Julian said. "I've been asked to join the board of a startup that's developing AI technology for financial inclusion. They want to use machine learning to help low-income families access banking services." "That sounds right up your alley." "It is. But I wanted to check with you first. I know we're both busy, and I don't want to overcommit if it means less time together." Naomi smiled. "Julian, I love that you're asking, but you don't need my permission to pursue opportunities that excite you. We support each other's ambitions, remember? That's what makes this work." "You're right. I never want to take this for granted. What we have is special and I protect it." "Me too. But part of protecting it is giving each other space to grow." The following week, Naomi traveled to Washington, D.C. to testify before a congressional committee on domestic abuse and financial exploitation. She'd been invited to share her expertise and advocate for stronger laws protecting victims. It was intimidating, sitting in front of senators and representatives, but Naomi spoke clearly and forcefully about the need for change. "Financial abuse is insidious," she told the committee. "It leaves no visible scars, but it's just as damaging as physical violence. Women who are denied access to money, who have their credit destroyed, who are kept ignorant of family finances, these women are trapped as surely as if they were locked in a room. We need better laws that recognize economic coercion as a form of domestic violence. We need enforcement mechanisms that hold abusers accountable. And we need resources to help victims rebuild their financial lives." Her testimony was covered by major news outlets, and it sparked a national conversation about financial abuse. Several senators committed to drafting new legislation based on Naomi's recommendations. She returned home exhausted but energized, knowing she'd made a difference on a policy level. "I'm so proud of you," Julian said that evening. "You're not just helping individual women through the foundation. You're changing systems." "I'm trying. There's so much work to do. And you're doing it. You're amazing, Naomi." In November, on a crisp Saturday morning, Naomi received a phone call from Angela, the first woman the Phoenix Foundation had helped. Angela was calling to share good news. She'd gotten a promotion at work, her children were thriving in their new school, and she'd started dating someone who treated her with respect. "I have my life back," Angela said, her voice full of joy. "I'm happy. Really truly happy. And it's because of you." "It's because of you," Naomi corrected gently. "You did the hard work. You left. You rebuilt. I just provided some tools." "Well, thank you for the tools. They saved my life." After they hung up, Naomi sat on her couch and cried happy tears. This was the impact she'd hoped for, the change she'd wanted to create. Every woman who walked through the Phoenix Foundation's doors represented a life transformed, a future reclaimed. That evening, Julian took Naomi out for a surprise dinner. He wouldn't tell her where they were going, just asked her to dress nicely. They ended up at an exclusive restaurant on the top floor of the tallest building in the city, with panoramic views and impeccable service. "What's the occasion?" Naomi asked as they were seated at a table by the window. "I'll tell you later. For now, let's just enjoy the evening." They had a leisurely dinner, talking and laughing and enjoying each other's company. When dessert arrived, 2 chocolate cakes with a candle on each, Naomi noticed something small and glittering on her plate. It was a ring. A beautiful diamond ring with a simple platinum band. She looked up at Julian, her heart racing. "Naomi," he said, taking her hand, "I know you've been married before and I know that experience was painful. If you never want to marry again, I understand and I'll love you just the same. But I want to spend my life with you. I want to be your partner in every sense of the word, equal and committed and true. So I'm asking, not because I need a piece of paper to prove we belong together, but because I want to make a promise in front of everyone we love. Will you marry me?" Naomi felt tears streaming down her face. "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you." Julian slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, and the entire restaurant applauded. Naomi laughed through her tears, overwhelmed by happiness. "I was so nervous," Julian admitted. "I know marriage is complicated for you after Derek." "It was complicated. But you're not Derek. You're nothing like him. You see me as an equal, you celebrate my success, you support my dreams. Marrying you isn't giving up my independence. It's choosing to share my life with someone who values who I am." They called their families that night to share the news. Naomi's parents were thrilled, as were Julian's daughters, who'd grown close to Naomi over the past year. Everyone was happy for them. As Naomi lay in bed that night, staring at the ring on her finger, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The pain, the betrayal, the humiliation of that night with the dirty water. The courage it had taken to leave. The work of rebuilding her life and her sense of self. She'd been through hell, but she'd emerged stronger and clearer about who she was and what she deserved. She'd learned that she didn't need anyone's permission to be successful, didn't need to hide her light to make others comfortable, didn't need to accept cruelty as the price of companionship. Derek had tried to break her. Instead, he'd freed her to become the woman she was always meant to be. And now, with Julian beside her and a future full of possibility ahead, Naomi understood something profound. The best revenge wasn't destroying her enemies. It was building a life so full of joy and purpose that her enemies became irrelevant. Derek was still in prison, serving out his sentence. Brittany was awaiting trial. But Naomi didn't think about them anymore. They were footnotes in her story, not main characters. The real story was about what came after, about how she'd taken the worst moment of her life and transformed it into a catalyst for extraordinary change. The new beginning was here. And it was more beautiful than Naomi had ever imagined possible. 1 year later, Naomi stood backstage at the Metropolitan Convention Center, smoothing down her dress and taking deep breaths. In 10 minutes, she would walk onto that stage to accept the Executive of the Year award, one of the highest honors in the tech industry. Her photo had been on the cover of 3 major business magazines this year. The Phoenix Foundation had expanded to 15 cities across the country. Quantum Tech Solutions had grown by 80% under her strategic leadership. And in 6 months, she would marry Julian in a small ceremony surrounded by people who loved and respected them both. "You ready?" Claire asked, appearing beside her with a bottle of water and a warm smile. Claire had been promoted to Director of Communications, but she still personally assisted Naomi at major events. "As ready as I'll be," Naomi replied. "You're going to be great. You always are." The MC's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce this year's Executive of the Year, a woman who has redefined leadership in the tech industry while simultaneously creating one of the most impactful charitable foundations in the country. Please welcome Naomi Patterson." The applause was thunderous as Naomi walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, the audience was massive, and she felt a surge of gratitude for everything that had led to this moment. She accepted the Crystal Award, a heavy piece of etched glass that caught the light beautifully, and stepped to the microphone. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady and clear. "This award is an incredible honor, but I want to be honest with you about something. 2 years ago, I was afraid to be in this room. I was afraid to be seen, to be recognized, to take up space. I spent years hiding my success because I'd been taught that my achievements made me difficult to love. I'd been taught that ambition was unfeminine, that intelligence was threatening, that success was something to apologize for." She paused, looking out at the audience. She could see Julian in the front row, his face full of pride. She could see her parents, her team from Quantum, the board of the Phoenix Foundation. Then something happened that changed everything. Someone I trusted betrayed me in a moment of profound cruelty. And in that moment, I had a choice. I could let that cruelty define me, or I could use it as fuel to become who I was always meant to be. I chose the latter. Naomi went on to talk about the importance of resilience, about refusing to shrink for anyone's comfort, about using painful experiences as catalysts for growth rather than excuses for bitterness. I founded the Phoenix Foundation because I wanted other women to have the resources I had to have to escape financial abuse and rebuild their lives. In our first year of operation, we've helped over 3,000 women gain financial independence. We've provided legal assistance, emergency funds, job training, and emotional support. We've watched women who thought they were powerless discover their strength. We've watched them rise from situations that seemed hopeless and build lives full of purpose and joy. The audience applauded, and Naomi felt her eyes well with tears. But here's what I want you to understand. Those women were always strong. They were always capable. They just needed someone to believe in them and give them the tools to believe in themselves. That's what the Phoenix Foundation does. We don't rescue anyone. We provide support while women rescue themselves. She held up the Crystal Award. This honor belongs to every woman who's had the courage to leave an abusive situation. It belongs to every woman who's been told she's too much or not enough and refused to believe it. It belongs to every woman who's chosen herself, her dreams, her dignity over the comfort of staying small. I'm just the one standing here holding the trophy, but we earned it together. The standing ovation lasted so long that the MC had to eventually encourage people to sit down so the program could continue. As Naomi left the stage, she was mobbed by people wanting to shake her hand, take photos, and tell her how much her work meant to them. Julian found her in the crowd and pulled her into a hug. That was perfect. You're perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm just persistent. Same thing. The after-party was elegant and crowded, but Naomi made a point of speaking with as many people as possible. She met young women starting their careers, established executives looking for mentorship, journalists wanting to cover the Phoenix Foundation's work. Everyone wanted a piece of her time and she gave it generously. Late in the evening, as the party was winding down, a young woman approached Naomi nervously. She looked to be in her early 20s, professionally dressed but clearly uncomfortable. "Miss Patterson? I'm sorry to bother you. I needed to thank you. You're not bothering me at all. What's your name?" "Rebecca. I've been following your story since the news broke about your divorce. I was in a similar situation, engaged to someone who was financially controlling me and making me feel like I was crazy for wanting a career. Your story gave me the courage to leave him. I called off the engagement, got my own apartment, and started my life over. It was hard, but I'm happy now. Really happy. And it's because of you." Naomi hugged Rebecca, the stranger who felt like a sister. "I'm so proud of you. That took tremendous courage. Thank you for showing me it was possible." After Rebecca left, Naomi found a quiet corner and called her mother. "Hey, sweetheart. We just watched your speech online. Your father and I are so proud we could burst." "Thanks, Mom. I wish you could have been here in person. We'll be there in 6 months for the wedding. That's what matters." "Naomi, I have to tell you something. When you were going through the divorce, I was so worried about you. I thought you might never recover from Derek's cruelty. But look at you now. You're not just recovered. You're thriving. You turned your pain into purpose and you're changing lives. I learned from the best. You always taught me that hard things make us stronger. I did teach you that. But you're the one who actually lived it. I love you, baby." That night, back in the townhouse she shared with Julian, Naomi stood on their rooftop deck looking at the city below. Julian came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Big day," he said. "The biggest. I keep thinking about where I was 2 years ago and where I am now. It doesn't seem real." "It's real. You built this life, Naomi. You earned every bit of it. I couldn't have done it without you. Your support, your respect, the way you see me as an equal, it made all the difference. I just love you for who you are. That's not hard." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Naomi thought about Derek briefly, wondering where he was and what he was doing. He'd been released from prison 6 months ago after serving 18 months of his sentence. She'd heard through mutual acquaintances that he was living in another state, working a low-wage job and struggling to rebuild his life. She felt no satisfaction in his struggles, no joy in his downfall. She simply felt nothing. He was irrelevant to her happiness. Brittany had been convicted and sentenced to 7 years in prison. Her trial had been covered extensively in the media, and several other victims had come forward to testify against her. Justice had been served. But Naomi didn't dwell on either of them. Her life was too full of good things to waste energy on people who tried to destroy her. Instead, she thought about the future. Her wedding to Julian, the expansion of the Phoenix Foundation, her continued work at Quantum, the possibility of writing a book about her experiences. She thought about the 3,000 women the foundation had helped and the thousands more they would help in the years to come. She thought about Rebecca and Angela and all the other women who'd found the courage to leave bad situations and build better lives. Most of all, she thought about that night 2 years ago when Derek had poured dirty water on her. In his cruelty, he'd thought he was washing away her worth, proving she was nothing. But he'd been wrong. The dirty water hadn't diminished her. It had washed away the lies she'd been telling herself, the pretense that she needed to be small, the fear that had kept her trapped. That dirty water had been a baptism of sorts, washing away the old Naomi who hid her light and creating space for the new Naomi to emerge, powerful, purposeful, and free. "What are you thinking about?" Julian asked. "I'm thinking about how grateful I am. For this life, for you, for the chance to help others. I'm thinking about how something terrible became something beautiful. That's because you're beautiful inside and out. You took pain and turned it into power. Not everyone can do that." Naomi turned in his arms and kissed him. "I love you. I love you too. Now come inside. I made dessert, and I want to hear all about every conversation you had at the party." As they walked back into their home, Naomi felt complete in a way she'd never felt before. She'd been through hell, but she'd come out the other side stronger, wiser, and more certain of her own worth. Derek had tried to destroy her with his cruelty. Instead, he'd given her the greatest gift possible, the motivation to stop hiding and start living authentically. He'd thought the dirty water would break her spirit, but it had only washed away her fears. And now, 2 years later, Naomi Patterson stood at the peak of her career, beloved by her partner, respected by her industry, and making a tangible difference in the lives of women across the country. She'd built an empire on the ruins of a broken marriage, and she'd done it with grace, dignity, and determination. The triumph wasn't just that she'd survived Derek's betrayal. The triumph was that she'd used that betrayal as fuel to become more than she'd ever imagined possible. She'd risen from the ashes like a phoenix, and she was never going back to the ground. This was her life now, full, joyful, purposeful, and free. And it was more than revenge. It was redemption.